Welcome back to my channel. This is at Tsukiyama angst Hanahaki Disease. I didn't know if I should use the voice or not, but I did anyways. I could make a part 2 if you guys want, but you guys need to vote on a happy or sad ending if you do want a part 2. Just a disclaimer that this video mentions blood. It's nothing graphic, but I just wanted to warn you guys. Anyways, please enjoy.
Tsukiyama sat down on his bed doing his homework as usual. His brown eyes glanced around the neat bedroom. He just couldn't seem to focus. Sighing, he grabbed his phone and called the one person who would care about his problems. He listened as the call went to voicemail. Strange. Yamaguchi never ignored his calls. He shook his head. Maybe he was just busy. Calling the freckled boy again, he waited as the call once again went to voicemail. His eyes flickered from the screen to the green-haired boy's contact. He anxiously bit his nail as he debated whether he should call the green-haired boy again. Just as he was about to call the boy again, his phone rang. He instantly answered and tried to seem calm, cool, and collected. Hey Tsuki. Sorry I didn't answer before. Yuji-san was walking me home. Yuji-san? Who's that? Oh. You know him as Hiroshima. The playboy? He isn't a playboy. Tsukiyama's mouth shut instantly when he heard Yamaguchi snap at him. I'm sorry Tsuki, it's just that everyone judges him based on his looks. He's smart and kind. He's nothing like what everyone makes him seem. Tsukiyama hummed as he listened to Yamaguchi ramble. He couldn't focus. The only thing on his mind was, when did they get so close? The next day Tsukiyama waited outside as usual. Every day he and Yamaguchi walked to school together. He looked at the floor as he kicked rocks. Where is he? He checked his time and he saw that it was almost 8 a.m. Yamaguchi was always at his house at 7:50 a.m. since it was only a 10-minute walk to school. He grunted in annoyance as he walked to school alone. Arriving at the school, he walked towards the entrance. Just as he was entering the school, he heard a loud yell echo the once quiet hallways. Tsukiyama. I didn't know you walk alone. Did Yams abandon you? Tsukiyama's face flushed red in embarrassment. Everyone in the hallway heard the orange-haired boy yell. Shut up you orange short idiot. Hinata huffed as he crossed his arms and looked away. Hinata spoke. Stop pouting and let's get to class. Hinata walked away, leaving the milk addict following his trail. Sighing in relief, Tsukiyama walked to class. He scanned the surroundings. He noticed a certain freckled boy wasn't there. With his eyebrows slightly raised, he walked towards his desk to begin the tortuous lesson. It was lunchtime and Tsukiyama still hadn't seen Yamaguchi all day. Throwing away his pride, he texted the green-haired boy. In Yamaguchi and Tsukiyama text messages. Hey Yams, how come you're not at school today? Read. Yamaguchi is typing. Tsukiyama waited for the response, but the 3 dots disappeared from the screen. I know you read the message. You could at least respond. Read. Yamaguchi, this isn't funny. Read. Tsukiyama turned off his phone. For some reason, he felt hurt. He knew that Yamaguchi wasn't tied to him, that he was allowed to have his own life. But still, the thought of his childhood friend leaving him terrified him. Tsukiyama walked into the cafeteria. He walked towards a table and sat down. He opened the cliche brown paper bag and got out his ham and cheese sandwich. Biting into the triangular slice of bread, he looked around the loud cafeteria. He cringed at the people around him. All of them acted as if they were at a zoo. Yelling, jumping around. Clearly he wasn't as uncivilized as the people around him. Rolling his eyes, he took out his juice box. He told his mother that he wasn't a kid anymore, but she insisted on giving him the childish apple juice. Sipping the drink, he laid his head on his hand. He never noticed it before, but Yamaguchi's presence truly brightens up his day. The cafeteria bell rang, signaling that lunch was over. The blonde was surprised that the 2 idiots didn't bother him. He shook his head. They probably were playing volleyball as usual. After a crucially long school day, Tsukiyama arrived home. I'm home. No response. Strange. Tsukiyama walked into the kitchen to see a note pinned onto the fridge. He grabbed the note and read it out loud. Your father and I are heading out for the week. It was last minute. I left food in the fridge and money on the table. Don't do anything dumb, Mom. Scoffing, he crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash. Like he would do anything dumb. He walked to his bedroom and tossed his backpack across the room. He was happy it was Friday. He didn't want to deal with anyone. He just wanted to stay in his room forever, but sadly he couldn't. He collapsed on his bed and looked at his phone. Still no text messages from Yamaguchi. Scoffing, he mumbled. Fine. It's not like I care if you respond or not. He sat curled up on his bed. He knew he was lying. He didn't know why Yamaguchi not answering or talking to him hurt so much. Staring at Yamaguchi's contact, he felt so tempted to just call him. But he didn't. His pride was still too high to just call the green-haired boy. The weekend went by fast and it was now Monday. Tsukishima laid in bed sick. He coughed violently. His body ached and burned. He felt dead. His phone ringing caused him to groan. He didn't feel like reaching for the phone. All he wanted to do was lay there until the icky feeling left. But the person texting him had other plans. Building up the energy, he grabbed the phone and saw Yamaguchi's icon glow up. Reading the messages, he scoffed. Now you want to text? After all weekend of you ignoring me. In Yamaguchi and Tsukishima messages. Hey Tsukishima. Sorry for not responding or talking to you all weekend. Read. Tsukishima noticed the lack of his nickname but didn't comment on it. I know you're probably mad. Read. I said sorry. Read. Why are you being such a bitch? Read. Fine. See if I care. Read. I don't even know I even bother with you anymore. Read. Yuji-san was right. I shouldn't bother with people like you. Read. Tsukishima reread the messages over and over. He wanted to apologize. Hell, he wanted to run over to the freckled boy's house and see him. But seeing how Yamaguchi messaged him, he probably was tired of the blonde. Tsukishima sighed. Who wouldn't be tired of him? He was surprised that Yamaguchi stood around that long. Tsukishima laid his head on his pillow as he coughed aggressively. Fuck, sometimes sleeping and never waking up felt appealing to him. It's been exactly 2 days and Tsukishima was still sick. He fought up the motivation to go to school. After that day, Yamaguchi hasn't tried to text or call him. Tsukishima walked to school, already hating the day. He finally arrived at school. Walking into the entrance, he didn't even take one step until he was tackled from behind. Saltishima. Why didn't you come to school? I haven't seen you in like forever. Tsukishima felt the air leave his lungs as he coughed. Cough after cough, pant after pant. His lungs started to ache. Hinata noticed how much pain the blonde was in and helped him sit up. Saltishima, are you okay? Kajiyama walked up to them and kneeled. Is he sick? How am I supposed to know? Boke. I was just asking. The two started to bicker, not even noticing the blonde. Tsukishima coughed up blood. At first, he didn't notice. Until he looked down at his hand and saw specks of blood. Panicking, he wiped his hand on his shirt and got up the best way he could. I got to go. Running away before the two could even disagree. He felt scared. So damn scared. He never felt so scared in his life. He coughed up blood. Never in his life has he been sick or even ill. As a kid, he had a great immune system, so seeing the blood terrified him. He finally stopped running. He looked around to see where he was. Surprisingly enough, he was in front of Yamaguchi's house. Mentally insulting himself for going to the one place he wasn't supposed to be. He was about to leave when he heard talking behind him. Freaking out, he jumped into the bush and hid. He knew it was dumb to hide, but he didn't want whoever it was to see him. Peeking through the leaves, he saw Yamaguchi and Hiroshima? I'll see you later, Yuji-san. He said with a smile. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, Freckles. Curiosity getting the best of him, he watched them. He was about to look away, not seeing anything worth his interest until he saw Hiroshima kiss Yamaguchi. He silently gasped, expecting Yamaguchi to push the male away. But he didn't. He did the opposite. He pulled Hiroshima closer. Tsukishima couldn't watch anymore. Tears fell rapidly down his face. He aggressively tried to wipe the tears. He didn't even know why he was crying. He looked to see Yamaguchi heading inside the house and Hiroshima leaving. Tsukishima got up and ran. He ran and ran until he collapsed and he was breathing heavily. Finally, he let out a heartbreaking sob. He grabbed at where his heart was. He was feeling an incredible amount of pain. It felt like hours. Him just sitting on an abandoned park swing. His eyes were swollen and his cheeks were bright red. His throat aches from screaming. He just wanted life to stop. Everything was so overwhelming and he just wanted a second to himself. He didn't even know how long he was sitting there. He noticed the sun rising and suddenly realized that he was at the park all night. Getting up, he rushed home. Hopefully, the day wouldn't be too bad. He arrived at home. He didn't want to go to school. He didn't want to see Yamaguchi. He didn't want to have to pretend to be alright when he wasn't. He sat on his bed and tried to forget about Yamaguchi and Terashima. He didn't want to remember them. But all he could think about was Yamaguchi and Terashima. He knew he wasn't the nicest person, but Yamaguchi could see how much he meant to the blonde. Tsukishima coughed, not noticing the green petals that followed after. A week later, Tsukishima was in pain physically and mentally. Yamaguchi finally talked to him again, but it was just to tell him about how he and Terashima were dating. Tsukishima remembers how much he cried that night. How he screamed into his pillow. Now he and Yamaguchi were friends again, but they weren't as close as they used to be. The whole team noticed the change in Tsukishima looks and personality, but they never commented on it. Tsukishima changed a lot. He became weaker. His body couldn't handle the pain. That resulted in him being ill. There would be nights where he couldn't sleep because of the pain. He would be up all night coughing and crying. He hated this pain. Tsukishima was getting ready for school as normal. He tried to sit up, but he couldn't. He started to panic. He couldn't breathe. Tears fell as his hands started to shake. He thought he was dying. His body lurched forward as he coughed up blood. He fell to the floor in a heap. Blood on his hands and around his mouth as he continued to cough. Little green petals fell from his mouth. His eyes widened in shock. More tears fell as more petals fell. Blood scattered on the petals, painting the mint green petals red. His mother walked up the stairs. Usually, her son would be awake and already downstairs for breakfast. She turned the doorknob. "Kei, are you still asleep?" She gasped at the sight. She screamed at the top of her lungs, alerting the whole house. She ran towards her son as she shook him. Kei, come on, stop playing around." She noticed the blood and flowers. She screamed for her husband to call the ambulance. Tsukishima laid on the hospital bed. The annoying beeping noise echoed in his eardrums. His eyes peeled open and saw his parents and older brother sitting next to his bed. He tried to talk, but his throat felt dry. His mom looked over and noticed that her son was awake. She gasped and hurried towards him. She hugged him the best way she could without causing him any discomfort. "Why am I here?" he said in a shockingly quiet and soft tone. "Honey, I." Her voice broke as she hugged her son tightly. "I'm such a terrible mother. How couldn't I notice how much pain you were in? Gosh, I'm so sorry, Kei. I promise me and your father and brother will do everything we can to help you." Tsukishima stood there confused. What? His mother wiped the tears falling from her eyes as her husband held her close. Tsukishima's older brother looked at him with pity in his eyes. "Kei." The doctor walked in, interrupting the sad aura surrounding the hospital room. "I'm sorry, am I interrupting something?" Both parents shook their head no as they left the room along with Akitaru to let the doctor talk to Tsukishima. "Hello, Tsukishima. I'm sure you're confused about why you're here." He nodded and let her continue speaking. "You see, your mother had found you unconscious in your bedroom in bad conditions." The doctor noticed how Tsukishima struggled to talk. She immediately got him a cup of water. He quickly drank all the water as he quietly thanked her. The doctor smiled at the teenager before she got into a more serious matter. "You see, you're suffering from a rare disease." "A rare disease?" The doctor sadly nodded. "It's the Hanahaki disease." Tsukishima looked at her in confusion. "Is it bad?" "Wait, what even is this disease?" he said with his voice breaking in between sentences. The doctor cleared her throat. "The Hanahaki disease is where someone is suffering from one-sided love. The pain of the one-sided love will cause you to grow flowers in your lungs. The severity of the case often comes down to how long you had the condition or how much you like the person." His eyes widen in realization. "As I said before, it's a rare disease, so there are not many cases of it. But from the cases, we do have two possible ways for you to be cured." "That is?" "Well, for the person you love to return the feelings or to surgically remove the flowers from your lungs." "And if I choose to not treat it?" The doctor frowned. "You will most certainly die from suffocation." Tsukishima's eyes glistened with unshredded tears. "So I could die just because of love," he said with a sour tone. The doctor nodded sadly as she looked at the young boy. She couldn't find anything to say. She didn't know how to help the teenager remain positive during his time of need. "I need to ask you some questions to understand the severity of the case." Tsukishima lowered his head and buried his face into his hands. 2 weeks. That was his estimated survival. Within 2 weeks he could die if he doesn't have surgery or somehow get Yamaguchi to like him back. He had stage 2 Hanahaki, almost stage 3. If he didn't go to the hospital when he did, he would have most likely died a week or two later. Tears fell from his eyes. Maybe he deserved it. Maybe he just needed to let this disease take over him. Maybe in the next life, he could live peacefully. Tsukiyama was free to go home. His surgery date was set for a week. His family didn't want to leave his fate in the hands of someone returning his feelings. But him, on the other hand, he wanted to wait it out. Even if he knew Yamaguchi would never return his feelings, he still had an ounce of hope inside him. He laid on his bed. With his head resting on his pillow, he stared at the ceiling. Life sucks, he thought. Suddenly he felt the need to throw up. Sitting up quickly, an outburst of coughs left his mouth. Petals fell out continuously. But something was different. Flowers fell out. Gasping, he scratched at his mouth, trying to stop the flowers from falling out. Green flowers of all sizes surrounded his bed. His hands shook and his breathing picked up. No, please. Just stop, please, he thought as tears fell out like a waterfall. The more flowers that fell out, the harder it got to breathe. He didn't even notice how much blood was coming out of his mouth. Yamaguchi, please save me. With that last thought, his body collapsed onto the hardwood floor. Akitaru was arriving home from the grocery store. His parents were at a meeting with Kei's doctor, so he was left at home with his little brother. Walking into the house, everything was silent. He had a bad feeling in his stomach. Running up the stairs, he burst into his little brother's room. His eyes widened as tears bundled up in his eyes. Kei, he screamed. The hospital ride was terrifying. He was in the back of the ambulance looking at his brother's limp body. He tried to forget the horrifying sight. He desperately tried to forget the sickening sight of his brother's unconscious body on the floor. He tried to forget how much blood surrounds the male. How many flowers were scattered, swirling around in the puddle of blood. He desperately tried to forget the tears running down his little brother's face, how his face was pale with tints of blue from suffocation. He let his head fall as tears fell. Please be all right, Kei, he thought as he held his brother's cold hand.
Thank you so much for watching this video. Also, I just want to thank you all for 200 plus subscribers. I didn't think anyone would watch, let alone like my videos, so to see that 200 plus people actually enjoy my crappy writing skills makes me so happy. Also, please leave any ideas or any ships you want me to write a story for. Anyways, I'm sorry for any editing mistakes or grammar errors.